SBC Media.
Brazil, a global economic powerhouse, deeply passionate about sports, and now home to one of the hottest markets in gaming. And we're giving it the full SBC treatment. Join industry leaders, market experts, and all the major players in the country for 3 days of content, exhibition, and epic networking at the first ever SBC Summit Rio.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
The baby boom. Generation X, Millennials, and now Gen Z. Names given to define different generations. However, it's the latter of the four that has captured the attention of the iGaming industry over the last 12 months. As fresh developments and tech innovation continue to accelerate across the globe, the challenges with attraction and retaining users soars to new heights. And this will be today's topic on iGaming Daily, as I'm joined by Conor Porter and Danny Lee of CasinoBeats. How are you both doing today?
I'm brilliant, thank you, James. Getting close to the Christmas period, and I'm ready for that Christmas break.
You sound like you're ready for it, because you didn't sound brilliant. I'm brilliant, James. I'm getting really looking forward to this Christmas break. Conor, you okay?
You almost went into like horse commentator mode with that. And I'll run up to the next date in December, coming up now. Yeah, I'm doing good, James. I'm doing good.
Good stuff. I'll normally ask how your week's been or your weekend's been, but we're going to do a fun little question to start off this, because we're talking about different generations. I think we're around the table, we're all different. Well, I say we're all different generations. I think I'd class myself as a millennial. Conor, you'd be
we're
millennial as well.
Millennial as well, yeah.
Danny, you are?
I'm not actually sure, What am I?
What year were you born?
2000.
So you'd be Generation Z.
X? No?
You'd be Generation Z, I believe.
Gen Z.
Gen Z. And our producer, who stunned me actually earlier when she said Gen Z, is now actually Zennial or something like that. There's a load of them cropping up, and there's too many to keep track of. But fun question. This Gen Z, or Zennial, as our producer Anaya like to call it, are obsessed with social media. And we've seen a lot of it in our jobs and within the industry. The use of social media is being used ever more. But what was your favourite social media growing up?
Vine was class when it was about. It's obviously not about much anymore. And I think other than that, it's probably just your standard ones. Twitter, use that a lot. X, yeah.
Well, you said when he was growing up, so technically it was called Twitter when he was growing up, So
it still is Twitter now, basically, though, isn't it? Facebook, I guess, as well. That was huge when we were growing up.
Didn't really use a lot of social media when I was growing up, but now my favourite's got to be Twitter, because I'm obsessed with fantasy football, and it's just the easiest way to get news about players in the NFL. So yeah, that's for me, Twitter. What about you, James?
Thank you for asking. So I used Facebook a lot when I was growing up, and it's kind of become a dead platform now. It's just I use it now out of familiarity. But I don't know if you can. No, Pixar wouldn't be a social media. It's just a web site a lot of people use when I was younger. Facebook, I'd say, and now I am, sad to say, quite addicted to TikTok. So I think I've jumped onto that Gen Z generation. I'm a millennial pretending to be cool and hip. I use TikTok quite a bit. There's a reason we've done this fun question and we're talking about the Gen Z audience. And this kind of stemmed from two roundtables that were on CasinoBeats. I believe it was last week you featured them. And it does focus on the industry's kind of need or want to delve into this new audience, this Gen Z audience, because even though it can range from, I believe it's like 1997 to 2010, where some of them are of legal age to gamble and to play iGaming games. So let's kind of just delve into the importance of this audience. And the features on CasinoBeats, it focus on how operators are trying to attract Gen Z players to the platforms. What were some of the key responses in the roundtables that you can think of that effectively acquire a newer generation of players? And also, who was part of this roundtable? Because there's quite a few names there. Yeah,
so before we go into that answer, in the roundtable we had representatives from Glitnor, SGG, Scribe, Silverback Gaming, and 1x2 Network. I won't go into the names just in case I get any mispronunciations, but I think an important thing to remember about Gen Z is that they are the first sort of generation that have completely grown up in like a digital age. And I think that's sort of reflecting a lot of these responses. So obviously mobile play is, I think, a huge thing to offer. I know everyone should be aspiring to be looking at mobile play anyway, but I think it's especially key for this sort of generation that's probably grown up the majority of their childhood and now their adult life as they get to an age to be able to gamble, being on their phones every day.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that comes with like social media and the importance of that side of things. So for brands to have presence on different websites, as well as sort of products that maybe integrate with social media as well, that is definitely important. So the roundtable, I think quite a few people mentioned streaming, which with all three of us here have talked about the importance of that in the industry quite a lot recently. And I do think the way you see how streaming has sort of grown out of its own platforms like Twitch and now Kick to being like, there's clips of streaming on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. It's, you know, it's popular on any social media, whether that social media offers streaming or not. There's always some form of it on there. And yeah, I think that's probably the most important thing, really, how it's a much more digital era for this generation.
Yeah, I'll jump off the back of what you said there regarding kind of the streaming side of things, certainly with this new generation. And I've already admitted that I'm a consumer of TikTok, and just looking at a kind of a B2C consumption when you're looking at sport. Nowadays, the newer generation, it's not about just watching the game and kind of analysing it yourself with your friends. They're actually watching some streamers watch the game and commentate themselves. I can think of one off the top of my head. I'm a Manchester United fan, so there's Mark Goldbridge, who is very active on social media, does streams and TikToks, and even got hired by TalkSport, which is a UK sports radio station, to do shows on there. And people gravitate to him instead of just kind of like watching the games themselves, because they're more intrigued about his responses and kind of his input than the actual game itself. But Conor, have you got anything to add on that?
Yeah, to build on that, you talked about the connection with Mark Goldbridge on TalkSport. You know, the reason why he's on there is because he's an influencer that connects with a Gen Z audience. So it's all about having those right collaborations for you know, a radio station like TalkSport looking to reach a younger generation. But the same can be applied for online casinos looking to get the right collaboration, partnerships, influencers paired up with their online casinos in order to correctly target those Gen Z players and to try and bring them in to the online casino product. So
yeah, this conversation's kind of came at an ideal time, because on Monday's podcast we spoke to Fernando and Isadora had a kind of an update about the Brazilian advertising regulations with celebrities and athletes. And actually, the core focus became to influencers and actually how big of an influence they're actually having on kind of online casino operators, and actually not having any knowledge of what they're promoting. And sometimes what they're promoting isn't a good thing.
Yeah.
And this is something, I said it on the podcast, and I'm kind of happy we're having this conversation now, is that it's a bigger issue, because at the end of the day, for these influencers, money talks. Not all of them. Like, we have affiliates in the industry, like slot streamers we worked with, like Fruity Slots you have for casino grounds. These streamers are really good. They're knowledgeable about what they're doing. They educate their audience to gamble responsibly. But you have other influencers who just look at the money, look at the check, and don't really have any concerns or knowledge about what they're actually portraying out to their audience. And I think this is a growing issue, which if the gambling sectors, companies, their operators and suppliers are looking to utilize influence more moving forward, they need to do their due diligence and also, if needed, educate the influencer before they actually start portraying their products.
Yeah, exactly that. And they need to make sure that the influencer connects with their brand identity as well, in terms of promoting the online casino, the product, you know, as you mentioned, make sure that their education, so a way that they might want to do it in order to connect with Gen Z players is through gamification. Just use the influencer essentially as a teacher for Gen Z players that are coming to the platform, and teach them, you know, how to play slots, or teach them how to play a game of blackjack or roulette or something like that. So that's that's ways that in which online casino operators can like incorporate those influencers into their branding. But ultimately is, as you said, making sure that those collaborations are the correct ones for the brand itself.
Mm-hmm. And let's look at the online casino side of things. We've already mentioned streamers with slots, and you have other games that people will play and portray on their platforms. But what sort of products within the online casino sector appeal to Gen Z players the most? And is there a clear kind of differentiation between what this newer generation of players want to play compared to like the older generation? Because for me, it was poker is seen kind of like an old school game. Blackjack as well could be seen that. Roulette is, all these classic staples of casino. Are they being transferred over? Because you've got now crash games and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think you see a bit of a rise in these sort of instant games, and there's always that suggestion that it's sort of appealing to instant gratification, which is way more prevalent in like for a Gen Z player than I think it is for more older generations or traditional players. And yeah, I mean, we've had multiple features this year actually on crash games across CasinoBeats and SlotBeats, and I think everyone we ask and speaks about it, does it appeal to a younger generation of players? They're always going to answer yes, because it's that ability to jump on a game and play around every 30 seconds, every 20 seconds sometimes, and just, get that gratification each time, or just play if you only have 5 minutes on your phone, play for those 5 minutes and then jump off, and you can jump back on again whenever you want. Whereas if you look at games like poker, you're putting hours into that game if you really want to play it properly, or other table games. It's interesting you actually mentioned those sort of games, because I think we're starting to see more suppliers sort of enhance those games a little bit to try and appeal to younger audiences. So you look at, I know some of these features have been around for a while, but you look at like lightning roulette games, or like enhanced, even like short form poker games are out there now, where you can just play against the dealer and play again and again in the space of like a minute or two per round. And that sort of says to me that maybe there is a bit of a differentiation between what the older generation wants and what these new players want, because they're still quite popular with traditional players as a traditional game. It's that sort of feeling of maybe the older generation doesn't want as much fuss involved with the game, and they just want to, play the game that they've loved for years. But at the same time, that's not to say that these older generations will also be attracted by these like different like multiplier rounds in roulette, or different enhancements that just sort of tweak it to that newer generation of players.
I think the big thing as well is that a lot of it is going mobile focused, because that's just the way that a lot of people are playing these days. But you also have the rise of live casino and streaming to take into account as well. So, and there's companies out there that are doing like live spins with the social streaming for the slots, with interaction and things like that. So social elements important to that, which plays into live casino as well. So there's not really like an individual product, but more I think that the direction to acquire Gen Z players would be to go mobile first, and make sure that whatever mobile first product that you have is one that has a great user interface and that is easy to navigate, so that those Gen Z players can easily understand the game and know how to play it as well, using those gamification tools as well to help them out.
Yeah, I think it's very clear and straightforward to say that if you are not focusing on mobile first when developing your games, you are pushing a boulder up a very, very steep hill from the get-go. But I kind of want to jump back onto a phrase that you said, Danny, and that was instant gratification. And I have a slight fear, and this might just be the millennial in me talking right now, that with the need to appease players more quickly, and I'm mainly referring to slots because that was kind of my bread and butter when I came to SBC. If you start to increase more instant gratification, more buy-in features, quicker to get into the feature rounds and so forth, or the jackpot wins, you are then neglecting what essentially has been probably about 70% of a slot game within the base game itself, which can bring the fun and entertainment on the suspense of trying to trigger this thing. So if you are trying to appease to a Gen Z audience by just offering them instant entry into these features, you lose, I think, for me anyway, you lose that part of entertainment where you're building up the suspense and hype of trying to trigger these rounds and play them. And there's then, when you do trigger it, it's a sense of achievement. You're like, yes, I managed to trigger this, what can I get? But you have that danger now of just instantly entering these features, and there's a financial issue you have to factor in as well, because these players will be paying a bit more money, a bit higher stakes sometimes to enter these rounds. It can very easily spiral out of control. Very, very easy. If you've not just kind of 20p bets here and there, do base game spins and enter, then get your gratification. You're satisfied because you've entered the feature round. If you're just constantly trying to spam it just to try and get a win, there's a danger there that it becomes very irresponsible. And I think absolutely try and target Gen Z to acquire and retain them, but err on the side of caution of what you're doing, I'd shout and say.
Definitely.
So if we kind of look at the kind of the nature of a Gen Z stereotype, you know, as a generation is seen to be more socially, environmentally conscious with its views, which is a good thing, but do operators and suppliers need to reflect this in their business to better attract these players?
Well, you already kind of mentioned it there with how they actually operate themselves, you know, making sure that those safer gambling and problem gambling help and assistance and tools are integrated, not only just on the online casino page itself, but within the game that they're playing, you know, pop-ups and things like that. Gamification tools, as we already mentioned, to teach people how to play responsibly is important. But at the same time, as you mentioned, there is a lot of focus on social and environment issues within Gen Z. And, you know, that plays in again the same, as already mentioned, with the right kind of collaborations with influencers, making sure that they're on the same page with those issues and bringing that brand identity to show a genuine commitment so that players, when they visit, they not only get the value entertainment from playing the games themselves, but also they can see that who they're playing with supports initiatives which they connect with as well. So I think that is important because it builds that connection rather than it just being like a, you know, just an operator with a player. It actually builds like a proper connection between the player and the operator, rather than it just being, oh, I'm here to, you know, to play a slot machine. There's an actual proper connection between the two.
Yeah, one of the things I'd be interested to see, because this new Gambling Act review is going through consultations at the moment, and there'll be a few things to look into. I really would like to do a bit more research and probably do a future podcast on what they're looking into when it comes to kind of advertisements. And we already mentioned it with the Brazil market and their stricter laws with sports stars and athletes. But I think to kind of combat a potential black market or grey market infiltration with social media influencers, I think there needs to be tighter regulations and potential punishments for promoting these to a mass audience of people. And again, I don't know the facts, I don't know the figures of what's going to happen with it. It's definitely one for a future podcast. I just would say it'll be interesting to see how they're being perceived, if they're even being acknowledged at all.
Well, that just ties into operators doing their due diligence on influencers, like you already mentioned earlier, doesn't it? So, yeah.
But even if the operator does their due diligence, there's still going to be influencers out there within the UK market who would probably, let's say hypothetically, they'll be associated with a black market or grey market operator, which, again, I don't know the facts or figures behind it, but it'll be interesting to see what regulations come from the Gambling Act review on this type of advertising. And Danny, before we move on, did you want to add any points to this? Or?
No, I completely agree with what Conor's saying there. I think as a generation, obviously, they might be more inclined to look into, you know, the ethics behind a company, but I still think that is something that's probably been around for decades in the gambling industry now, because so many companies...
It's just becoming more highlighted, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's probably reflective of the generation itself, and probably the rise of social media as well. There's a lot more criticism of what a company is doing in their businesses, and I do think it's just more prominent now, but it has been a problem for companies for a while, because, let's be honest, a lot of these companies, they make a lot of revenue, and a lot of people are interested to see whether some of that goes back to any sort of communities, if it's a land-based venue that's making money, or if it's going into like charitable donations. And that's, again, mentioned in the white paper, again, it's something to keep an eye on with the research, education and treatment levy that's going to be coming in, and seeing how that money can actually be used to fund, those parts of the industry and trade bodies.
Mm-hmm. There could be an argument to be made that actually, let's look at the UK market, just an example. The UK GC and operators within our market, actually, they don't have any responsibility when it comes to the black market and grey market associations. And in fact, it actually should be on the platform that these influencers are using. I know Twitch, they went through the major rule changes last year. So that's what spawned Kick. And even YouTube are getting tighter with the terms and conditions. And maybe it needs to be something that's more reflective in these social platforms terms and conditions, that you can't promote an unregulated site. That's probably, I think that would be a fair remark to make. We are at the end now. There was a few more questions and topics that I wanted to delve into, but we are sadly short on time. So I'm going to leave it with this one. How do you see this Gen Z generation for online casino moving forward? Danny?
Yeah, there is a bit of a risk that you were mentioning there with slots and sort of the requirement to include a bit more of that instant gratification stuff, like you said, buy bonuses or the ability to get to the bonus round quicker. And obviously, I think we'll see a lot more niche games and stuff as well. But I think this is something that the industry sort of has under control for now. I can't see us seeing like a complete rise in like games that are just, you can click it and click it and click it and play like God knows how many rounds within the space of a minute and just, lose money. But no, I think it's definitely something to sort of keep an eye on some areas of the industry. But I think for now, yeah, it's under control, I'd say.
I think it's important for operators and suppliers to remember that there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. You have to do your best to include everyone because everyone has different tastes and styles. So for operators and suppliers, that basically means making sure you have a diverse staff from like different backgrounds and beliefs and experiences in order to track those trends and keep on top of them, to not only just address and help acquire Gen Z players, but also keep the older generations included as well in the in the promotions for their online casino products and things like that. So keeping diverse and making sure that the one size fits all approach to whatever they're producing is stayed away from, to keep it the different tastes and styles in mind.
Yeah, I hope they keep some nostalgia in place, but I think moving forward, I would love, and we've seen already a slight increase with multiplayer slots we've talked about in the past. I would love, and I'm looking forward to seeing them integrate more social elements to casino games. And again, I always come back to slots. It's, again, my bread and butter, but it is we'll probably call it the tennis of online gaming, because it's a very individual game. So you play it on your own, it's a solo game. But to start incorporating some social elements into this, like live spins I've done with the streaming side of things, I think moving forward, that would be such a more interesting concept and create that entertainment value, which, let's all remember, that's what these games are for. They're entertainment. Let's start creating that social element so people can start having, like they would do with video games, and like when they incorporated it back in probably 2008, 2010, they started having that interaction with players, and it creates another level of fun. Let's bring that into the online world. You already have it sometimes with poker and even kind of blackjack. Let's start incorporating it more into every other sector of the games and just have a bit more fun with it. I think that's kind of one of the Gen Z things I'd love them to amplify more moving forward. Well, that's all we've got time for today. Conor, Danny, thank you for joining us on this conversation, this Gen Z conversation. The links to the roundtable I will leave in the description below. But apart from that, tune in tomorrow for more iGaming Daily.
SBC Media.